1, Genesis, Chapter 4, A Death in the Family, Part 2. Tom now walked the length of the Pathfinder, pointing out the welds Ron Milfeld performed. "There isn't another man on Earth who can do this type of work without using a welding fixture," Tom said reverently. Rod admired the artistry and asked Tom for an estimate on a launch date. "The NSS wants to go August 27th, Tom replied. "The tube bundle's never going to be ready, and I won't be ready before September. Hurry up and wait." "Problem is, there's less labor than money on projects like this," Tom continued, stroking the Pathfinder's engine casing with a loving hand. "That's why I picked a design with the least amount of labor and the highest reliability." Randa, still smiling, asked about automotive culpability. "Cops are always pulling me over," Tom answered. "I tell them the Pathfinder is a prop for Chuck Norris's next film." Randa laughed appreciatively and related her extra acting work on the television series Babylon 5. Tom suddenly considered it wise to change his Chuck Norris alibi to reflect Randa's Hollywood connection, if only to deal with any intrepid patrolman bucking for promotion. We all agreed. If you had to drive around Los Angeles with a missile strapped to your vehicle and explain yourself, bullshit was certainly easier to serve up than the truth. Rod apparently knew of the dissension within the PRS ranks and pressed Tom on the tube bundle team's attempts at sabotaging the Pathfinder, but Tom was unconcerned. "They can't stop me. I'm 90% done now," he crowed. "Nobody can stop me from doing rockets. For years, whenever I wanted to fly a rocket, I just drove to the desert and launched it. Nobody cared. But this NSS project has been so high profile, if I sneeze, somebody will say, 'Where's your pyro-op? Where's your permit?' I get finked on whenever I do any little thing, because there's people out there that don't want me doing this. There's lots of guys breathing down my neck, trying to get something into space, so I gotta operate legally. I couldn't do something this large without somebody finding out." "I was briefed on Tom Chappell. He's a rocket man to the core, but he's a little loony," Paul had reported. In terms of establishing a true civilian space program, Tom's rocket dreams were identical to Paul's, with the 15-foot aluminum cylinder atop his truck, the gleam in his eye, the star child of Tom's new space age. And Tom Chappell was diligently working on the birth announcement for the dawn of his cosmic nativity. "Let's say I get this piece of crap in the clouds and get lots of national notoriety," Tom began, still caressing his metal fetus. "Then I start making more sounding rockets. By then, there'll be enough money for all of us, if we invest it properly, to develop a booster that puts something into orbit. Once we do that, it'll be much harder for the government to stop the thousands of entrepreneurs who will follow in our footsteps." "Thousands?" Rod was incredulous at the figure, as was I. Were others building space rockets in their garages? It seemed unlikely. The masses were intent on consuming frivolous entertainments. "You think there's that many rocketeers?" Rod asked. "Will be once we do it," Tom answered confidently. Tom Chappell was one in those thousands, with an obvious desire to be first. "Hot damn, we're pioneers," I exclaimed, "and as pioneers, I suggest we all stake a claim in my front yard." The sun was blazing, and I wondered which was hotter, the Pathfinder's metal casing or the surface of Rod's head. Repaired to the shady lawn, Tom paced my St. Augustine and began a rabid harangue on his perception of the government interference threatening to abort his pregnant rocket dreams. "My belief is this," he started. "The government uses space to empower itself with billions of taxpayers' dollars, and our government is like birds of a feather fucked together." "Tom!" Randa squealed in faux fury. "You have such a way with words," she cooed, now obviously unoffended. Tom spied a tetherball court in the corner of my yard and set a course for the weather-worn ball dangling from a rusty chain. "It's the state fire marshal's office that's keeping us down," he complained. Foomp! Tom sent the ball into orbit around its metal pole, powered by an angry right fist. He stood on the perimeter of the ball's circumnavigation, and the only part of Tom Chappell now moving were his eyeballs, just like Walter Cronkite's optic gymnastics for my own recurring Cape Kennedy dream. "I really need to get my pyro-ops license," Tom admitted, his baby blues still tracking the jingle and whirl. "But the fire marshal isn't even issuing them anymore. The thing is, the fire marshal doesn't directly get money from NASA, but California gets lots of money from NASA. And NASA's bigwigs don't want any snot-nosed punks flying rockets into space, because that'll make them look bad, and they won't be able to charge $30,000 a pound on the space shuttle anymore." Tom had accelerated the tetherball with another punch, and the impact resonated in sync with his voice. "Punks! NASA is eliminating competition. They are running what I consider an illegal space monopoly. And they're standing on the necks of guys like me. I know I can build stuff cheap enough that nobody could ever compete with me. I don't mind going head-to-head with 1,000 entrepreneurs. Doesn't scare me a bit." This man, Tom Chappell, was exceeding expectations gathered from Paul's briefing, and enjoying his rant, I egged him on. Private enterprise always outstrips government programs when they're allowed to compete, I said. We could put Rockwell, Lockheed, and General Dynamics out of business. Tom suddenly lost interest in the tetherball and looked at me like I was an unclaimed $10 million lottery ticket. Yes, yes, he roared. I'll take on anybody. I don't need no stinking laws protecting me to stay in business. And that's the way I want it. I want the game fair. It's not fair right now, and it ain't right. It's not the United States they rammed down my throat in high school government class. I had to laugh. It's not even the same country anymore, at least not the same one I was born in. You want a beer? I asked. No sale here. Tom Chappell wanted to talk. I want to start playing in the big leagues. Never got my chance to play baseball, so this is my best shot at playing in the big time. It happened Tom Chappell was as animated by the game of baseball as he was by rockets. He claimed to have batted .500 in a semi-pro league in Barstow, an outlandish boast that, not surprisingly, sailed right over Rod Milliron's bald head. Rod did not appear to be much of a sports fan. The white block letters on his Tenebris t-shirt said it all. Technocracy, science versus chaos. I gave Tom a toothy grin that said, bullshit. Only God can hit .500, son. Only God. Anyway, I got some great ideas, Tom continued, his braggadocio persisting. If somebody's got $40 million, I'll give them a permanently manned space station and a moon landing on the interest I'll earn on $40 million. I'd give them their $40 million back. You'd do better getting into the satellite launch industry, Randa suggested. That's where it's about to happen. It's going to explode in the next few years. Big time, as you say. Randa was right about that. Aviation Week and Space Technology magazine had just conservatively projected a $100 billion plus launch industry over the next 5 years. I could do that too, but the U.S. is going to miss all of it, Tom frowned. It's going to be big, but not in this country. We have a world economy, okay? Any big corporation that finds launching satellites too expensive here will just set up shop and launch from other countries. And if the U.S. claims absolute power to stop them, they'll just laugh at them. And what'll the U.S. do? There's nothing they could do. There's no enforcement agency. Sure there is, I corrected Tom. It's called the U.S. military. Nah, they'd never use force to stop people from launching peaceful satellites. No, but they could cook up some other reason. Jesus, it was difficult enough keeping track with the conspiracies, but there I was, dreaming up more. Won't happen, Tom stated flatly. The military still operates under a certain amount of accountability. And the big companies like Motorola, they can buy out our military top brass or bribe the Congress. Yeah, I suppose, I conceded. The heavyweight corporations are no longer even U.S. entities. They're international. They don't give a shit about our economy. Why should they? They're businessmen, Tom reasoned. It's not that they're bad guys. The problem is nobody can launch from U.S. soil. So more power to them, I say. That's what I might have to do. After I prove myself, I might have to contact other countries. But I'll give the USA first whack at it. That's all. I wouldn't even bother with the U.S., Rod interjected. They'll crush you like a bug. You should approach countries we have trade agreements with that are stable economically and politically, like Canada. Canada's perfect, Tom agreed, because the valuable launches for this so-called information superhighway aren't equatorial orbits. They're polar. We'd launch over the pole, over Siberia, then over a bunch of ocean. There's nobody to give a shit. Russia wouldn't give a shit. They're not in a position to say anything anymore anyway. Although I just read where Clinton gave some money to Russian entrepreneurs for rocket launches. Some of us guys here in the U.S., we could use a handout. But Clinton's abandoning us and giving away our money to foreigners. I don't understand it.
Ебать его!
Anyway, I'm not waiting till I can launch because there's always a possibility a window may open. We'd need the right president for that, someone like Reagan. He was the first person who tried to open up space for everybody, but it all died after he left office.